Now we're going to go into section 4.2, which is all about logarithmic functions and the logarithms. So let's start out with defining what a logarithm looks like, what it does, and how the function goes together. So I have here something that says for x greater than 0, so x is like our variable, it's bigger than 0, and a positive constant b greater than 1. In other words, the number we're going to use for b is greater than 0, not equal to 1. We define the logarithm and the logarithmic function as y equals log base b of x. So how I said that is we have this log, stands for logarithm, and then I said base b. Base b goes down below the word log. We call it the base of the logarithm. And then x is our variable, which up above again is saying that x is greater than 0. So it kind of limits the numbers that we have here inside of our logarithm. Now where this is coming from is this whole logarithm thing is the same thing as b raised to the y power equals x. So what we're looking at are kind of two different ways of rearranging the different variables, different constants, all around this thing called a logarithm. The way that I wrote it over here with a log, we call that log form or logarithmic form. This over here goes back to where we were a little bit ago in the last section. We call that exponential form. So there's two ways of writing this, as a logarithm in log form or an exponential form. Another way of looking at this is the exponent is equal to log base, goes beneath here, of the answer. And that is the log form. And the exponential form would go base raised to the exponent equals answer. And that would what we would call the exponential form. So logarithms and exponential functions kind of go together. And ultimately what happens in a logarithm, go from a log form to an exponential form, we swap out the thing on the inside of the logarithm, here I'm calling it the answer, with the exponent. If we flip those around, that takes us from log form into exponential form. So where we're going to start here is to look at some examples of just changing from one form to the other. So what I'm going to do here is to convert from log to exponential form. Starting with this thing that says 2 is equal to log base 5 of x. Now if you're writing these on your own, make sure you put your base number for the log, in this case the 5, down slightly below everything else. That's to show that this is the base. So if we look at our thing here, our base is 5. Our exponent is the thing the log is equal to. The log is always equal to an exponent, so that would be the 2. And the thing on the inside, we'll call that the answer. That's equal to x. And we're going to write this in exponential form. Base to the exponent equals answer form. So in other words, that would look like base 5 to the exponent 2 equals x. That's going to be what this will look like in exponential form. Now a shortcut we could take to do this in the future is just to swap out the 2 and the x and drop the logarithm. So that would put the 2 above the 5, drop the log, and the x would go over where the 2 is. So we would get the same thing, 5 to the second power equals x. Here's another one. Log base 3 of 7 equals y. And so let's change this from the log form into the exponential form. And so again, kind of the shortcut to do this would just to swap out the exponent, the y with the 7. And in exponential form, this would look like 3 to the y equals 7. Now in this example, we're going to convert from exponential into logarithm form, starting with b to the third power equals 8. So again, this is an exponential form. An exponential form is base to the exponent equals answer. Our base is b. Our exponent is 3. And our answer is 8. And so we want to write this in log form, which goes log base answer equals exponent. So if I rewrite all the stuff that we have here in log form, it'd look like log base b of 8 equals 3. That would be the equivalent way of writing this in its log form instead. A shortcut we can take in the future is just to swap out the 8 and the 3 and put the log out in front of everything. So we put the log out in front of the b becomes the base down below, the 3 and the 8 swap around. So let's look at another one here. This one goes e to the y equals 9. Now what I'm going to do here is swap, to take the shortcut way, just swap the y and the 9, put the log in front, so log, the base is e, and then log base e of 9 equals y. Now just before we move on from this one, this is the log form, but there is a special name given to log base e that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Log base e is also called ln for short. So here in a little bit we'll start talking about this ln, and that stands for log base e. So just to show y'all another way we could write this, instead of saying log base e, we could write this ln 9 equals y. That's another way of writing it with the special name for log base e.